Welcome to Outside the Box. I'm your host, Grant Pruitt. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We didn't have a show, you may have noticed, 2 weeks ago. We run on a 2-week schedule. And the reason for that is I was fortunate enough to attend the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors European Conference in Warsaw, Poland. And I was really excited to see what they would say on the other side of the pond. I've been to a lot of the conferences here as it relates to real estate and didn't quite know if they would have the same concerns and challenges. And one of the themes that was very apparent was disruptors. Disruptors in the industry, disruptors in real estate, disruptors in life in general. And you may have been reading in the news that there's a lot of tariffs and there's tariff wars between the U.S. and other countries. And 3D printing was a big topic of discussion, and it really got me thinking about other disruptors in business in general. And what the topic of discussion was if we have 3D printing, how does that impact real estate? And I thought it was a little bit of an interesting question because there's two things that it does. Number one, these tariff wars that we're having will very quickly taper off if we're able to push our product through the internet from country to country. And we're fortunate as a company to be working with a number of corporations that are outside the United States that are setting up entry points here in the United States that do similar type work, or at least planning on doing similar type work. And what 3D printing allows is for companies to push a button in one country, send it via the internet to another country, and then print and deliver that product. And the question was, how does this impact distribution? How does this impact warehouses? And inevitably, when anything that deals with disruption comes up, Amazon comes up. And it really got me thinking about, will 3D printing kill distribution? Will it kill warehousing? And so I started to think about when Amazon came onto the scene, and they're really pioneers in the direct ship business. And the thought was, well, with direct ship, warehouses will become obsolete and people won't need them anymore. And all this space that we've built will just dissipate because we're going to be able to take the product from wherever we're buying it, manufacturing it, distributing it, and directly distribute it to the end customer. But the effect that it had is that it did the exact opposite. A 250, 300,000 foot warehouse in the 1990s was very, very large. Amazon is infamous for having million square foot warehouses, and really we see quite a few of these million square foot facilities in and around DFW and around other metroplexes around the country. So then when they started to build these facilities, they said, well, we only need a couple big facilities, and that's all that we're going to need to be able to service any metropolitan area. Once again, we're going to kill the warehousing. And what happened was they introduced features like Amazon Prime, next day shipping, shipping within a few hours. And what that meant was they had to be able to very quickly access rooftops. So what happened? The distribution need increased yet again. And that's really where we've seen some of the largest growth as far as demand and square footage. And I really think that we're going to continue to see that. And these are just projections, pontifications, but if we don't plan for the future, we're planning to fail. And what I see with 3D printing is I really see the Amazon model part 2. Instead of manufacturing the product and distributing it from a manufacturer to a port and shipping it across from Asia to Long Beach and then trucking it across or putting it on rail and distributing to somewhere else. What it really allows us to be able to do is anywhere in the world have a point of presence, push a button, print the product wherever it needs to be delivered, and then distributing from there. So when I started thinking about this, it seems like what we're going to see is Amazon part 2. We're going to see the need for some place for them to produce this product with a 3D printer grow. We're going to see the demand for this grow. And then they're still going to need to be able to distribute to these rooftops, to these end users, to the people that are demanding the product. So I say that and that I get asked to do fun things. And I got asked to speak to a couple folks as it relates to retail and where we see retail going. And once again, I couldn't help but mention Amazon. And as a firm, we do retail on the investment sales side. We do some retail on the tenant representation side. But for me personally, I had to do a little bit of research. And as you may know from this show, I'm a little bit of a historian. So I like to look at the history of what I'm talking about. And so with 3D printing, we're writing the history. But as it relates to retail, which, by the way, the genesis of this I have here with me, there was an article that mall vacancies hit a 6-year high. It's the largest since the recession at 8.6%, which is that's a healthy vacancy, especially in what has been a pretty robust economic recovery that we've continued to see in pretty good economic expansion. And so the question was, where are we going with malls? Are malls going to die? Will we continue to see mall vacancies? So being a historian, I want to do a little bit of research. And so what I found was until the, call it 1900s, people had always bought product in the same way. They would either go to a market or there'd be a store they'd go to. The people would oftentimes live above the store. You'd go into a store, you would go to the counter, you would ask for what you wanted, and then they would go in the back and fulfill the order for you. And mom and pop stores operated like this for really hundreds of years until a new technology came about. And there was a disruptor. And that disruptor was Frank Woolworth. And he's the one that started Five and Dimes. And the way that he disrupted the industry is he started taking products from behind the counter and displaying them on shelves. It sounds simple, but so does the wheel. The first guy to invent the wheel, what a great idea. Since people have been using wheels ever since. So this is the first guy to start displaying product. And what it allowed the consumer to do was to go in, touch and feel it, see if they like it, see if they don't want it. It was a self-service model. There were oftentimes less touches in the back. It was easier to get more people in and out of the doors. And people liked it. So he did really well. So then he came up with another idea. And he said, I think I can go direct to the distributors, direct to the manufacturers, to the merchants, etc., and I think I can buy in bulk. And I think that I can fix prices. Because up until this point in time, people would come in and haggle about the prices. And he said, you know what? We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to let the consumer come in. They can pick up their cans. They can pick up their goods. They can touch them. They can feel them. They can look at them. And and whatever the price is on the side of this is what they're going to pay, which was an incredible idea, and it really started to compress the margins. And so it did very, very, very well. Similarly, fast forward 20, 30 years, retailers started to think, well, how do I get people into my stores? So you started seeing Selfridges in the UK, they started to put public bathrooms in their stores. Like I said, sounds simple, but allowed people to shop longer. They can spend more time in there. You started seeing elevators and escalators, new means of transportation that started to go in. So fast forward to the 1950s. 1956, the first fully enclosed, climate-controlled mall in the United States operated. In 1959, the first Dallas area shopping mall was developed. And these were revolutionary. They were enclosed. They were climate controlled. They were a gathering place for people. They allowed people to shop. They allowed people to interact. And they did extremely well. So 1970s to 1990s, new disruptors. You had big conglomerates like Walmarts and Kmart. You had big power centers that came in, and they were accessible. They were easy to use, and they ran out a lot of the smaller businesses. And quite frankly, they ran out a lot of the smaller moms and pops. And if you remember, 15, 20 years ago, the big threat, the big disruptor in the market was Walmart. And everyone was concerned about Walmart running out the moms and pops, running out the small businesses. They would buy in bulk. They were able to accommodate a lower price than everybody because of that. And they ran out all of their competition. And everybody was concerned about Walmart, while a certain online book retailer started to disrupt. And Amazon came onto the scene and was really competing with Barnes & Noble, with Borders. And I don't believe Barnes & Noble's, I guess Barnes & Noble's is still around, but I don't believe Borders is still around. And what Amazon did was see an opportunity, see a way to disrupt, see a way to change the world, and they seized it. And they've expanded into the new Walmart. We don't talk about sticks and bricks being competitors anymore. We talk about Amazon being the competitor. So as I look at this, it really comes down to the life cycle of the business. Recently, GE, one of the last, if not the last, original member of the Dow Jones, was taken off of the Dow Jones. And as a young man, as a kid, GE stock was about as good as it came. It was more stable than the U.S. government. And if you would have told me then that GE would have come off of the Dow Jones, I would have said you're crazy. And I mentioned that, and that when I talk about the life cycle of the business, they go up, they go down. They go up, they go down. And there's always a niche boutique type competitor that's out there, that's chipping away, that's trying to find new opportunities, that's trying to be more nimble. And Amazon was that, but who knows who will be there in the future. Amazon right now is King Kong, and they certainly are the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So what does that mean for malls? What does that mean for real estate values? So I took a few stats for you, and this was real estate value trends. And being a historian from November 2007, which was the peak, to the trough in 2010, there was a 40% price decline in all real estate values. It was 37% in apartments, 39% in retail, 32% in industrial, and 45% in central business district or CBD office. The price increase from the trough in 2010 to December 31st, 2016 was 105% overall. That's 142% on apartments, 62% on retail, 69% on industrial, and 175% on office. Now, if you take that same peak in 2007 to December 31st, 2016, all real estate values were up 23%. Industrial was actually only up 14%. Retail was down 1%. So the reason I bring this up is they're fairly stable assets. And what I believe you're going to start seeing, and this was one of the topics of discussion when I was in Warsaw, is that we're continuing to see a fluidity as real estate is concerned. And what I mean by that is people have always thought of having apartments, office buildings, warehouses, malls, and what we're starting to see as far as demand is concerned is a blend of that. And I think that's going to really impact retail. The other thing about retail is it encompasses the three tenets that are most important as it relates to real estate. What are the three most important things? Location, location, location. Shopping malls are extremely well located. They're extremely accessible. They're very close to rooftops. And the reason is they got to be close to the consumer, and they need the consumer to come in and visit their stores and buy product. So I talked about 1959, first mall in the Dallas area. It's Big Town Mall. It's on U.S. Highway 80, or was, at Buckner Boulevard in Mesquite. And when it hit the DFW area, it was revolutionary. FedEx bought the site. They demolished the mall, and they turned it into a distribution facility. And yes, the FedEx man, I don't know if he shows up to your house like he does at my house, but he seems to show up quite frequently with Amazon packages. And it's a great location for a distribution facility that's trying to afford that last mile to the end user, to the consumer, to a lot of rooftops very quickly. It's got the accessibility, and it's right there by them. And so I think you're going to continue to see that use be incorporated into shopping malls. They may be demolished, they may be retrofitted, but I think that the distribution use is a big chunk of what we will see as far as repurposing of these particular malls. The other thing is, you hear all the time that industrial is the new retail. And people say that because Amazon is so big and is taking so much space as a percentage of the industrial market to fulfill all these orders that they're getting. Well, if that's the case, they're taking retail, turning it into industrial, and yes, industrial is the new retail. The other thing that I think you're going to see with shopping malls is new uses. They make a great place for office space. They're easy to get to. They have a lot of amenities. They make great call centers, especially if they have a lot of parking, which inevitably they do to get people in and out of the stores. We're seeing a devolution of the traditional mall, and we're seeing an evolution of the mixed use. The retail stores are also starting to take on a different shape. And what I mean by that is they're becoming distribution centers for the retailers. So, yes, they have their store up at the front, but in the back, they're able to distribute. They're able to pack and ship. Amazon, everybody thinks of as an online retailer, and while they are, they bought Whole Foods, which is well located next to many rooftops. And so what it's allowing them to do is to be able to further distribute and ship from additional locations. What we're seeing has been termed omni-channel retail, and using retail for fulfillment. And there's really 5 types of distribution under roof in these types of facilities. That's wholesale, business to business, e-commerce, returns, and store replenishment. And quite frankly, one of the biggest challenges in the bigger distribution facilities is that return that the store is typically more used to dealing with. And so in some ways, this could be a much better use for that. The other challenge that shopping malls have when people start using them as additional distribution points, though, is what about all these packages? What about where do they go? How do they pick them up? So there have been some very savvy shopping mall owners that have implemented centralized pickup facilities or centers for their e-commerce, centralized drop centers for e-commerce, because what it allows FedEx, UPS, the mail service, any other couriers that they're using to do is to go and pick up packages from 5 or 6 different retailers, take them out and distribute them, and then any of the returns they can bring back and they can sort them all in one kind of mail center type place. And I've been asked very frequently, so if this is what's going on, what about the big boxes? Is this going to continue? And what I think you're going to see is we're seeing this now, a disruption, but you're going to see a repurposing. Simon Properties, one of the largest retail landlords in the world, says they spend over $1 billion a year on their malls. And when they talk about the work that they're doing, they're always talking about trying to be ahead of the curve and trying to take on this obligation. One of the things that they're doing is trying to, quote, de-mall their malls. So they're calling them shops. They're calling them villages. They're calling them town centers. They're calling them anything but malls because people don't want to feel like they're going to a mall. The other thing that's one of the biggest changes that you're going to find with shopping malls and with shops in general is it's very easy for me to go online and buy basic essentials. So why am I going to go into a retailer? Why is anybody going to go into a retailer? It's got to be an experience. Experiential real estate, experiential retail is going to be the next wave, and that is the way that you get people into a place. The thing about humans is they are social beings. They like to be around other people. They need a place to congregate. They like to congregate. And a mall, being close to rooftops, being easily accessible, well-known, is a perfect place for this. And so that's why you're seeing them put in children's theaters, high-end gyms, better in restaurants, outdoor theaters. They're trying to create an experience that draws the people in. The retailers as a whole have to do the same thing. Apple is a great example of a retailer that has really, really done a good job of creating experiential environments. They do a ton of business online. They do a ton of business in e-commerce. But if you ever go to an Apple store, it's always packed. You know, when my phone breaks, I can't ever get in to see anybody. And whenever I have an appointment, I go in there, and it's still a 45-minute wait for me to see somebody, even though I have an appointment. It's packed. There's people all over the place. The Genius Bar is full. Going to an Apple store is an experience. It's a place for people to congregate. It's just like Starbucks. Why do people go to Starbucks? Because it's like a living room outside of the office, outside of your house. It is a place for people to congregate, to exchange ideas. It's experiential real estate. And that's what we're going to continue to see with malls. The idea that retail is dead, I believe, is a misnomer. I just think that it's shifting, and it's taking office and apartments and other experiences, and it's melding them together, and it's creating experiential real estate that we haven't had in the past. It's no longer siloed. And that's really, when they talk about live, work, and play that we've been talking about for a long time, and the millennials and their quest for experiences, retail can often be called the most perfect form of real estate. And that's ultimately what's happening here, is they're listening to the people that want to hear to have experiences, that want to have the live, work, and play, and they're melding them all into one facility. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is disruption. Well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for listening. I hope that you had as much fun as I did, because I sure learned a lot preparing for these different talks and attending these different talks. And I hope that you'll tune in to us next time. I'm Grant Pruitt, your host, and I hope to hear from you again.
You're listening to RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.